Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner, episode number 165, Night of the Living Dead, the classic 1968 horror film directed by George A. Romero. With us tonight to discuss this classic from 1960s is my good friend, our one and only co-host, Mr. Ross Amico. And joining is another old friend of mine, going back from the theater days of Country Gate, is the one and only owner of Country Gate. He's an actor, he's a director, he's a writer.
Oh my.
And he's the one and only Mr. Bill Scurato. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Hi, Roy. Hi, Ross.
Hi, Bill.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be with you tonight. Roy, I did another show with you once upon a time, way back when you were first starting this. I believe it was about the Twilight Zone. Was it episode number 2?
It was episode number 2, Bill. And that was the second episode out of the gate for when this whole thing started back in April of 2020, if you can believe that.
And that's when I proved that I had a face for radio, because there was no video for me at that time. I was on the telephone. Hi, Roy.
I know everybody had to watch me talk and just go. That was, yeah. And we had no slides. It was very primitive.
It was primitive, but look how far you've come. I mean, it's fantastic. You guys have done a great job. I'm very, very impressed with everything that you guys have done.
Thanks, Bill. That means a lot coming from you. Thank you so much. Well, I want to welcome you and welcome Ross and welcome our viewers that are out there tonight. And I'm checking and seeing who's out there. And I see that Christian is joining us from Canada. Welcome, Christian. Good to see you out there. Colin is also joining us. He's joining us from the UK. Welcome, Colin. Jeff Rubel's actually joining us from out west. Welcome, Jeff. And then also Liz is also joining us from the UK. Welcome, Liz. It's great to see everybody out here, and we're well represented from other countries. And Don Bethman is joining us from Delaware. Welcome, Don. And Lou is joining us from Rhode Island. Great to see you out there, Lou. Welcome. And I also see our friend Vinny Fodi is out there. Hey, Vince.
The Vin Man.
Great to see you guys out there. And David is also joining us. David's joining us from Berlin, New Hampshire. Welcome, David. Great to see you, and we appreciate you joining as well too. So yeah, this is pretty cool. And what a movie! I mean, a movie that actually has so much history. There is so much for us to talk about. That I think that Ross, we could go on for hours and hours.
And we probably will. But this is the kind, another one of these movies. I forget what the other one was that I just said this, but where I just want to sit down. I want to have everybody in a room. We all get like pitchers of beer or bottles of ouzo or something, and just stay up all night and talk about Night of the Living Dead. Because there's just so much, not just history and behind the scenes stuff that's fun to talk about, but there's so many themes and so many things that this influenced, that we really could just go on and on and on. And I hope we don't. No. I hope we can keep it to 2 hours tonight, Roy.
No, we will. We will. And speaking of the undead, Matt Anthony is in the house. Welcome, Matt. And then also Brennan is joining us. Welcome, Brennan. Good to see you out there. Thanks for joining. All righty. Now, with that said, I'm going to ask the question that I always pose to Ross and also our guests. And I'll start with you, Bill. When was the first time that you actually saw this movie?
I think I saw this back when it first came out, back in the late 60s, maybe, when it really first came out. And I remember, and I wasn't a big horror movie fan, but I remember enjoying it very much, more so than I had normally expected to. And, I've seen it, several times since then. But as you know, Roy, we did a little film festival at the theater during the month of October, where we did some horror films, and I got to introduce this movie to the audience before we screened it. And what I told that audience is what I'll start off with here, is that it's an influential zombie movie, it's an influential horror movie, and what is impressive to me, it's an influential independent movie. And I'm sure we'll be talking about all those things as we move along.
No, great points. And I have to say, Bill, what better way to start a month of October, Halloween month, horror month, spooky month, than with actually than going into using the Night of the Living Dead. I mean, it was perfect for the theater and to introduce and to actually bring in people together. So that had to be really pretty cool.
It was great, and the audience that was at the theater that night really enjoyed the movie. And afterwards, they stuck around afterwards, and we had some nice little discussions about it. So it was great.
That's awesome. How about you, Ross?
Now, this is hard to say. I know I saw it in the 80s for the first time, but I saw it several times in the 80s. So I'm not sure which time was exactly the first time. If I saw it as a midnight movie, I know I saw it on the screen a couple of times, and I saw it on. They used to show it on the public television station in Philly. Also, it was in their rotation of films that they would show on a Saturday night. So I've seen it numerous times. I haven't seen it in a number of years, though, so this was good to get reacquainted with it. Strangely enough, in the public domain. So, I hope nobody paid to watch it because it's everywhere.
Right.
And George Romero didn't see a cent, so or he sold very little money for it.
Yeah,
the amount of money it made. Yeah.
Which is really a shame when you think about it, because this movie has lasted. I mean, literally, this film was shot between, I think, July of 1967 and January of 1968. So in that time frame, I mean, we're talking at least 55 years when production had started and it wound up ending. And look where we are now and how much of a staple it is in regards to American history, especially in filmmaking, as Bill was saying, in regards to independent films, horror films, zombie films. And it really was the starting point for a lot of the films that actually were to be made and continue to be made since that time.
Mm-hmm. Well, you guys better than us do, but there were movies called zombie films before this one, I believe, but this one really, I think, defined it as to the way we think of a zombie movie today. Is that right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because before zombies were, Bela Lugosi would have them working in the sugar mill, or, they'd be wandering around like somnambulists in Val Lewton movies. Or I thought belatedly Plan 9 has the zombies, has Tor Johnson and Vampira. So
funny you should mention that, Ross. I have become an expert on Plan 9. I have seen it 50 times in the last month, far more than any human being should ever see Plan 9 from outer space. And we'll talk about that more a little later, because if you come to see our little Plan 9 experience, you'll not only see the movie, but you'll see your friend Roy there singing and dancing. So you don't want to miss that.
And it's right up. It's right up there with Plan 9. From there
you go.
I want to welcome some other folks that are actually joining us. I see that Linda is joining us from Canada. Welcome, Linda. Good to see you out there tonight. Hope you're doing well. And I believe this is Randy Lee checking in. For some reason, his name doesn't come through. But Randy, welcome. Thanks for being out there. Deborah is also joining us from Phillipsburg. Welcome, Deborah. Good to see you there. And Dennis Chevalier is joining us from Canada. Welcome, Dennis. Good to see you as well, too. And Sue is also joining us from Massachusetts. She's saying, hi, Roy. Sorry I'm late. I just finished work and rushed to prepare a little something to eat before the show, but spilled something in the kitchen and made a big mess that I had to clean up. Just make sure the zombies don't get a hold of it, because they might be smelling that, Sue, and they're going to kind of...
Yeah, it's Bosco chocolate syrup. Yeah.
Sue, they're coming to get you.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So...
But,
no, as Bill was saying, though, that this was like the big transitional film for the zombies. Every zombie film that was made after this is indebted to Night of the Living Dead, where they become flesh eaters, cannibals, with a hunger for human flesh. This was an innovation that they came up with this film, and like our discussion of Damien last week in The Omen, everybody associates all the things that they came up with specifically for The Omen as actually having appeared in the Book of Revelation. It's like that with the Night of the Living Dead. It's kind of the touchstone in pop cultural consciousness of what zombies are, But also, like Bill also said, and I'll conclude, it's excellent independent filmmaking. If it weren't a zombie movie, it would still be a great movie. It's the Citizen Kane of zombie movies, is what it is.
Oh, Ross is hitting all the points tonight. Well,
Ross
in
is
regards
right
to
on
Bill's
target.
points.
Good job, Ross.
One thing that's really interesting is that in the film, zombie is actually never referenced. They never actually reference the term zombie in the movie, but it's so relevant, though. I think they refer to them as ghouls or the undead, but we all know them as zombies.
As I read about it, it seemed like they were kind of figuring it out as they went along. I mean, Romero had never made a movie before. I don't think any of these people had ever really made a movie before. They had done TV commercials, I think, and industrial films, but then they said, "Hey, why don't we? Hey, kids, let's put on a show. Let's make a movie." And, it was wild.
But what's really cool about that too, Bill, is it in a lot of ways, and we're going to come back to the theater, Country Gate, it really reminds me of a lot of the camaraderie that is amongst the theater group. And then also, I mean, just several years ago, and I can't believe it's been like 6 years ago, you had come up with, because you come up with these really cool projects and these inspirations that you do. And you came up with the movie, and then that's with the troupe. And it was getting everybody together. We did it on a weekend and filmed it through on Saturday and Sunday. And it's an example of how this is what they were doing. And it was, for me personally, I actually had not done a lot of research on this film before seeing it. So I kind of like went in, watched it. Then I did the research, because for me personally, I had seen bits and pieces, and I'd always heard about Night of the Living Dead. I mean, it's so revered, but it was something that I personally had never like sat down and watched. It was always one of those movies that I said, I'm going to catch it at some point. I'm going to watch it. And then what happened and I think this happens to all of us, you have a perception or a visual or an image of what you think a movie or maybe even a TV show is going to be about, just from a hearsay. And then what happened was, when I actually sat down and watched it from beginning to end, it was along those lines, but kind of different. So then it was really interesting to read about all the background information regarding how they came together. And it was really cool, because it was like a lot of friends getting together and just coming up with this whole thing and then going for it.
Well, and one of the other things I saw was that they had been making these. They were based in the Pittsburgh area, and they had been doing TV commercials and a lot. And they had a lot of Pittsburgh clients who employed them to make local commercials. But whenever there was a national campaign, the clients would always go to the LA or to the New York agencies. And Romero and his pals, they resented that big time. And that's where that independent nature, I think, comes from. So they said, okay, the heck with it. Let's try this on our own. Got together with some of their pals that they knew. I don't think very many people who were involved in that production had much movie making experience, but they certainly did the job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he studied film. He was very serious about film, but he had not made a feature before. And yeah, he was pretty loyal to Pittsburgh. A lot of his movies wound up being shot or set there.
Right.
After that, it's a very interesting. I called it the Citizen Kane of zombie movies. It's like, I think if Orson Welles made a zombie movie, this would be it. It's interesting for a lot of reasons. I could come up with all these lofty comparisons. I think of it like as the Beethoven's Ninth Symphony of zombie movies too, because in music history, like everything changes with Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. It's like a summation of everything that came before, and then after that, everything is different. And it's kind of like that with this movie. This is like the quintessential 1950s, 1960s drive-in movie that, however, holds the kernels for everything that comes after, in horror. All of the, the visceral intensity. You don't have just guys standing around saying, gee, let's get together and scare off these space aliens with our headlights or something like that. I mean, they've had exploitation movies and drive-ins for a long time before this came out. In fact, Herschel Gordon Lewis had movies that he was producing in the early 60s were much gorier than this. In fact, I've never been able to sit through one of them. They're so nauseating. But Romero's really is I think the one that was the most influential as far as pushing the needle. And in fact, it caused such a stir when it opened, because the Motion Picture Association, the rating system was not in place yet. It was like a month before the rating system.
Right.
So all these kids sitting in the matinee and this thing comes on.
It's all about timing, right?
Everybody's eating intestines and stabbing each other with trowels.
Can you imagine the kids seeing this movie and then, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, maybe 8-year-olds. I remember Shari and I went to go see The Joker, and it was very, very intense. I mean, it was really, really deep, and it was very, very graphic, and it was a movie that no child should have been in. Or actually, you know what, I'm saying The Joker, I think it was actually the third Batman movie, and I believe it featured the Joker. I think Heath Ledger was the Joker that was in it, the villain.
Yeah.
And what happened was there was like a 6 or 7-year-old that was in the theater with their parents. The child was crying because the child was so scared, and we couldn't believe that the parents would not bring the kid. Finally, after maybe about 15 or 20 minutes of screaming, they finally actually left. It's like, how do you basically have your child, submitted to that? I mean, it's insane, and they did it. And anyway,
yeah, that's why we're all so desensitized. From our dads taking us to see a Mega Man when we're 5. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Ross, you mentioned Citizen Kane and Orson Welles, and so I have to jump in and say one of the things that impressed me also about this movie is it reminded me of the War of the Worlds radio broadcast, because it had a documentary, had a kind of a documentary style to it, and I thought that really was an effective tool.
Oh, absolutely. And the whole documentary feel of it is what really makes it work. And I think all horror should be low budget. I think the less money they give movie makers, unless they're Ed Wood, it just seems like the more inventive, the more resourceful they are when they make their movies. I mean, the fact that he had no money when he made this, and he made it with his friends. This is the kind of movie that made me want to make movies. Yes. Not this movie specifically, but that kind of whole, do it yourself, guerrilla kind of filmmaking. That got me excited. When we used to make Super 8 movies and stuff, that was the kind of,
well,
I don't want to. Yeah,
you just took the words out of my mouth, because it reminds me of when we would write these we'd write these scripts in like the summer of 1980 and 81. I mean, Joe, Ross's cousin Joe Metz, who's been on the show, friend of the show. I mean, in 8th grade, he actually wrote the last plot, and it was part of his project, and he got the whole buy-in of Lopakong, to do it. And then I remember we showed it in the theater or in the gymnasium, at one point. And then during the summers, we would write movies, and he also did The Cosmic Gate. He did Omelet, and that was based on Raiders of the Lost Ark. Then there was Sunny Side Up. You did Inner Vorzid. I did An Hour to Live. I did Journey to Where, ripped the title off of Space 1999 episode. But it's just that it was projects that we found that, to be fun, that we would do, during the summer. And you would get our editing tool out, and, it looked like a Star Trek communicator. You put the film, the celluloid in it, and you're flipping it down to cut the film, and then you're trying to tape it. And if you wanted to make effects, you'd be scratching the celluloid, for 24 frames for 1 second. I think that was 24 frames per second. And just this whole process. And then you would show it on the screen, and there was no sound. You would try to maybe put it to music, or you would do an audio dubbing. And God forbid if you had the film going at the wrong speed when you taped it, because then when you went to re-show it would be off. But now I wish we had the tools that we have now back then, because it would have been so much fun. But these guys, to your point, Ross, and to Bill's point, I mean, they were friends and everything, but they did have some of the materials. They had they had the cameras, they had the equipment. So they were able to actually go to that next step. But it's kind of like Bill, with when you had the equipment available to do the filming, the camera, and then and with Cullen with the sound and bringing everything together. It's the same type of process, and it's just only that it was taking place maybe 45 years later. as opposed to when this film was made, which is kind of cool because it's the same type of dynamics, the same type of formula, but it makes for filmmaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really an amazing process, and I agree. I wish, and of course, I'm way older than both of you guys, but I really wish that when I was younger, I would have had the tools that young people come up today, with in terms of video storytelling. It's fantastic. It's really great.
Mm-hmm.
I see Captain Phil is out there. I just want to welcome him. Phil says he's moving furniture tonight. We'll catch us on the replay. Nobody eat Ross's brains, please. I'm saving it for Thanksgiving. Good to see you out there, Phil.
It'll feed a family of 8, Phil.
I see Claudia's joining us as well. Claudia, welcome to the show. And Shari's out there. Hi, hon. Thanks for joining us.
Shower scene. No, there's no running water in the farmhouse. Sorry, Shari.
Hey, guys. Hey, Bill. Watch out for the zombies. Have to say, shower scene, lots of laughs. Can you imagine a zombie shower scene?
Totally hot.
It's the running joke on the show.
Roy sings and dances.
Matt's writing a book. Matt is saying, man, I had to write a college paper on this movie for Timothy Corrigan, who is currently head of the Penn Family Film Theory program and was teaching from his book, A Cinema Without Walls, at the time. Oh, and he lived with Fassbinder at one time and would go on and on about how dirty he was and how he smoked so obsessively that he exhaled smoke in his sleep.
That whole comment was just for Christian, I think. Christian Lellenset would enjoy that comment. More Fassbinder comments, please. Yeah. Lasagna. No sausage, please.
Jack Daly's joining us. Welcome, Jack. And then Vince is making his comments. Yeah, thanks, Vince. Much appreciated. I'm not even going to repeat that. Linda's giving you high praise, and Dennis Chevalier is saying drink, because I said camaraderie. And Christian is commenting, I heard about Night of the Living Dead in 1978 on a Christmas party here and had to wait to pay it and see it on Halloween Marathon in 1982. Mm-hmm. So, and Martin is joining us from New York State. Welcome, Martin. Thanks for being out there. Says, hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I've been trying to run out of zombies. I had to stop several times so they could catch up.
Yeah, they had that whole Michael Myers thing going. Never have to move fast to catch
yeah. Oh, boy. And then Matt's saying, and that's Matt.
Hey, some frozen peas. Yes.
And Allie's joining us. Hey, Allie, thanks for joining us, my friend from work. Good to see you out there. Hope you're doing good. And let me see. Hi to Todd as well. And let's see. Eva is joining us. Welcome, Eva. We've missed seeing you out there. Hope you're doing well. And let's see. Randy Piazza is also joining us. Randy, welcome. Good to seeing you out there. We got a nice contingent out there. And I see Greg Player. Hi, folks from Edinburgh, Scotland. Greg, welcome. I know it's late there. We welcome you being out there. Thank you.
Boy, Roy, you have an international following. I'm impressed. Wow.
They're here for you, Bill, and they're here for Ross, and they're here to hear about Night of the living dead. And Christian is saying, I'm not much on lasagna, but my beautiful ex-wife was a great cook too, and she got me into lasagna. Hey, and Chris LaRoche is joining us. Welcome, Chris the Shadow, and he's joining us from Florida. Welcome, Chris. So, anyway, wanted to share a couple slides, and just for a moment, and then we'll come back. So let me do that while I have them here. And even the movie poster is a lot of fun. I mean, they won't stay dead.
Yeah, you can't get much more lurid than the title Night of the Living Dead, which I think has put a lot of people off seeing the movie, if they're not into horror. And it's one of the movies I always encourage people to see of this genre. It's just like I haven't seen it in many years now. Maybe I would change my mind if I saw it again. But the same thing with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Who would go see that movie? But it's a very good horror movie, a very good movie. Now, that could be me remembering what it was like to see it when I was 19 years old or something. Maybe I would hate it now, but it's a good movie, and you don't see like in this movie, it's very sparing with the gruesomeness from our perspective.
But Ross, you bring up a good point now about the title, because the title of a movie can influence what you think. Now, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I've actually never seen it, but I've also heard what you just commented. A lot of folks will say it's a brilliantly done horror film, and it's worth seeing. But to me, just because of the title, I kind of strayed away from it. Which brings us to the title of this film. The title of this film was originally, I believe, the Night of the Flesh Eaters. And then it also had another name, which was the Night of the, I want to say,
Night of Anubis.
Right. It's the god of the dead. God of the dead. But as a result, they actually filmed the title card with the original title, in which the copyright date was listed. But when they redid the title, they forgot to put the copyright date and the copyright infringement, which left it open to public domain inadvertently. And that cost them a lot.
Right, which is why it didn't make George Romero the money it might have made. Apparently, he wasn't like a really savvy business guy anyway, and the distributors got most of the profits for the film, which were enormous. But about the copyright thing though, it's interesting because the same thing happened with Carnival of Souls, which actually influenced this film in part. I don't know if you've ever seen that one. It's another film that went right into public domain but in their case, they just forgot to register it. They just made the movie, and it just, immediately everybody made copies of it and showed it everywhere. It's kind of another cult classic.
We always like to give a shout out to Starlog magazine, because back in the day there was no internet, and Starlog number 21, incidentally, who had Buck Rogers on the cover, Gil Gerard, which came out in 1979. It was actually a really good article with George A. Romero that was actually in the Starlog magazine. And there was a lot of talk about the sequel movie, which was filmed, that came out in 1978, which I believe was Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead shall walk the earth. Never seen the trailer for that at the State Theater all the time?
No, not at the State.
No.
I mean, I've seen the trailer. No, I did not.
Oh, man, this trailer scared me. Yeah. Between that and The Shining, they were always showing those trailers at the State.
But it's crazy, though, to think that there was only a 10-year span. I mean, I say that repeatedly, but it's like 10 years ago from us, like now. I mean, what is this? This is 2022. So 2012, I mean, it's the year that Shari and I got married. I mean, it was 10 years ago. And I think that everything that happened in 10 years, but when you think of 10 years from 1978, 79 to 1968, 69, it's like, oh my God. But
that's
again,
our whole lives. Yeah.
I
mean, for Roy and me, sorry, Bill. but yeah, I mean, I said that Night of the Living Dead is the Citizen Kane of zombie movies. Dawn of the Dead is like the Godfather Part 2 of zombie movies.
Now, did you see that movie all the way through?
Oh, absolutely, multiple times, and it's just as good as Night of the Living Dead but he takes a totally different angle on it, and that's why it's great.
Gotcha.
It's a totally different movie, and yet explores. He did 6 zombie movies. I only saw 3 of them. I didn't see the last 3 that he did, but in every one, he kind of expands more and more and more on his themes in these films. It takes a different perspective on the zombies. So it's kind of if you have a strong enough stomach, it's kind of amusing. And he only seems to really let go in one or 2 scenes in the movie. Most of it's just suspense. There are 1 or 2 where they want to show how far they've come with the special effects, and you want to throw up. But
enjoy your dinner.
But if you can get past those, they're pretty good movies.
A lot of variables there, Ross.
The first two are worth seeing. They start to drop off with the third one, I think.
And just to refresh our viewers out there about some of the scenes. So we'll show some of these. And this is.
I just love the black and white.
Yes.
And to think that they did it for budgetary reasons. I mean, this movie would not have been as effective if it had been in color.
No, not at all. I mean, and it has a film noir style to it too. And just his camera angles. I mean, everything's kind of on the tilt. It reminds me a lot of The Outer Limits. I see a lot of The Outer Limits in this film. And again, it's because of the way it's photographed. Outer Limits was black and white. It was shot between 63 and 65, but it has that kind of eeriness to it. And I don't think it was deliberate, but it's a style of filmmaking, and it really works very well with this film.
Yeah, I think the black and white aspect of it really delivers more of a believability, believe it or not. I mean, that sounds kind of counterproductive, but to me, it works much better, and it's more realistic, you know, in the black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they colorized it too, which I'm okay with it as long as they don't destroy the original. I mean, that's just something that it's okay to watch it that way, but it should really be preserved in its original intent. And from what I read, it sounds like that the original proofs were actually potentially destroyed, the original copies.
Oh.
I think in a basement, I guess.
Flood.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is because it isn't public domain. There are several versions of it drifting around, not Romero versions, but people did things like colorized. John Russo, who co-wrote it, came back for the 30th anniversary, and he filmed some new scenes and inserted them in the movie and messed with the soundtrack. Apparently Romero was okay with that. He said he would never go back and touch it himself, but he said, fine. But he did wind up suing Russo at some point because Russo went and directed a film called Return of the Living Dead, and he didn't like the fact that he was using Living Dead in the name of the movie. So I guess they settled. I don't know. I think the judge. I think it was one of these things where they said he would have to pay Romero, but he could keep using the Living Dead name or something like that. So there were two strains of Living Deads going on then. I think Romero resented the fact that it came out opposite Day of the Dead, which was his third zombie film. You know, that his co-writer would come out with the movie around the same time. Probably ticked him off a little bit, justifiably.
Oh, absolutely.
So you don't want to get oversaturated with the zombies. You're hurting my box office.
But you know, it's interesting though, because growing up, I mean, again, Starlog magazine, Fangoria was the horror magazine, which I believe was like the sister magazine to Starlog. But you would always hear about these movies coming out like every so many years. And then it seemed to kind of drop off for a long time. And then it started to pick up again, I guess, in the 2000s. And then Zombieland, I mean, we're going in a different direction. But with Woody Harrelson, I remember seeing that movie and just roaring. I saw that with Shari and her mom and Glenn, and then also with Tom and the kids. And it was so well done. But it had been several years since seeing a zombie picture. But this specific movie, as we were saying earlier, though, really just kind of is like the focal point where it all starts. It's like there was, you know, almost like before the Night of the Living Dead, and then there's after the Night of the Living Dead, and it's just the progression of how things went.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There are a lot of zombie movies that it's spawned indirectly by influencing, like you say. I never saw Zombieland. I almost watched it the other night, and I still haven't seen it. But Shaun of the Dead, of course, which I still haven't seen either. But Walking Dead, the TV series,
that's right.
And they all draw off the Romero mythology with the it's canon that they eat people now. You know, specifically brains. They love brains.
Yeah, and is it canon also of how to destroy them with the shot in the head?
It seems to be,
and the burning, right? Is that
burning?
Yeah, the burning. Yeah, I guess kind of like the vampire with the stake through the heart and chopping the head off and putting the garlic in its mouth. Yeah.
Well, George Romero was saying too, I guess, that he was influenced by I Am Legend, Richard Matheson's book.
Right.
But that dealt with vampires more so, and he didn't want to go down that route because that was already established. So he kind of went with the ghouls, the zombies.
Yeah, if you've ever seen the Vincent Price version of that called The Last Man on Earth, it is very similar to Night of the Living Dead. It has that same kind of thing where they're both siege movies. Mm-hmm. You know, this essentially is a siege movie. They're in a farmhouse. And that's the whole movie. They're trying to get into the farmhouse to get them, and they're trying to keep the zombies out.
Ross, are you saying we should go to the plot?
What I'm saying is this is an established genre. I mean, it crosses genres. You see it in military movies. You see it in westerns. You see it in horror movies. You see it in thrillers. It's the kind of thing. It goes all the way back. Where somebody gets stuck in a fortress somewhere in the middle of a desert, like Bojest or something, or The Last Command with Victor McLaughlin and Boris Karloff, or they're the Alamo. The Alamo. I mean, that's you're stuck in there, and you got the people trying to get in. The superior forces. And who's going to survive? This kind of thing. And how are they going to survive? So.
It's a formula that works, though.
Yeah.
Some of the comments coming in. Eva is commenting. She said, likewise, crazy work schedule. Great to be back. So we're happy you're back, Eva. All roads lead to space 1999. Zombie eats Brian the Brain. Vince is saying, I am here for Bill and Ross. Well, okay, you're so... nice, Vince.
Have another pierogi.
Yeah, have another pierogi. Your Joe's steak sandwich out there.
I was envious of that one. Yeah.
Martin saying, best take off this movie is Shaun of the Dead. And Colin is saying, wasn't meant to be in 1968. Guess it's what we are used to now, but parts are quite amusing to me.
Oh, well, I think that there's some intentional humor in the movie also. I mean, there are scenes that are funny and certain and ironic also. There's kind of like there are different kinds of humor. I think I don't think there's a lot of unintentional humor. At least I don't see it in there. But maybe Colin's got an overdeveloped sense of humor.
It could be.
He finds certain things funny that I don't.
Don is saying both Carnival of Souls and Night of the Living Dead have been given Blu-ray treatment by Criterion. Good to know. Thanks for sharing that, Don. Appreciate it. And of course, Matt is saying freaking wall with zombie hands busting through.
Yeah, right.
Oh, and Sean Tienerman is out there. Sean, thanks for joining us. Sean is saying Dawn of the Dead is playing in 3D this weekend at Regal Cinema in Easton.
Yeah. Now, is that the original one? Because they remade all these things. I wonder if that's the one that Romero made or if it's the later one.
Yeah, let us know, Sean, about that. We'd be very interested in finding
where
that
the
out. Zombies
get fast. Yeah.
Jack Daly is asking, did Barbara ever actually get candy from Johnny?
Yeah.
Jerry Seward is joining us. Jerry, welcome to the show. Jerry's saying there was a Vincent Price movie that was an influence on this as well. Wasn't there?
Last Man on Earth was very close. Yeah. Which became a Mega Man, by the way.
Yeah. Which has scarred Ross for life since he was 5 years old.
Right. That's the Richard Matheson I Am Legend story.
Yeah. Chris LaRoche.
That's exactly right. Black and white was everywhere back then. Still, I mean, when I was a kid, black and white, everything was black and white. The newscast that they had was not far off from what we used to watch. And you got to think it's right before the moon landing. This is 1968, and it's all kinds of it's a crazy time period in American history, a real transitional time, and that decade was so volatile. And for that reason, whether Romero meant to put everything in there that's in there, it's evident. I mean, you could read all kinds of stuff into this movie, in the different social and political trends that were the frictions that were going on at that time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we weren't past half the stuff that we needed to be, and in some respects today we're still not. Chris LaRoche is writing. The Vincent Price film also was in black and white and dealt with similar themes. And also, Paul Miller's out there. Paul, welcome.
Yeah, Paul. Yeah, there's another Siege movie, Straw Dogs.
Straw Dogs,
yeah. better heat up that oil on the stovetop. Yeah.
Jeff is commenting they would have survived the Alamo if they had gone into the basement.
That's where Pee Wee Herman's bicycle is. The basement of the Alamo. Yeah, the plot's going to eat up so much unnecessary time. So much to talk about in this movie. If you could do the plot in 5 minutes, but if you go over 5, I'm going to have to.
Ross is going to start twitching and turn into a zombie. Watch out, Bill. Sean is saying that it is the original. Thanks for confirming that, Sean.
At the Regal, huh?
He said it's at the Regal.
I haven't seen it in years, so I wouldn't mind.
And it's in 3D too. So
don't know that I'll get to see it. Is it this weekend? He said it was.
He said it's this weekend.
Yeah, I can Google it. I probably won't, but.
Don saying, I was just thinking about Beyond. If I remember correctly, it took them forever to figure out a shot to the head worked, then immediately forgot its effectiveness.
So, you know, now that I open up this can of worms about the decade, I mean, you gotta think about, so they're John Carpenter's breakthrough, Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah, that was a remake. It was a remake. There's the original from
did
the
they remake
70s, and then with I can't think of the actor's name from from like the 2000s. It's he's a really good actor too. Oh my goodness, who's in the remake? Denzel Washington. I got it. Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
But yeah. Go ahead, Ross. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Dwayne Jones, the lead in the movie, Ben, or one of the leads, but he's the one that kind of you're drawn to him because he's kind of the authoritative figure in the film. Was not written as a part for a black actor, but when they auditioned him, he was so good that they cast him, and he brought a lot of his own ideas to the film and totally changed the whole character of the movie.
But I think that says a lot for George Romero, though, that they actually did that because they were open to it. And the original actor that was going to do it, I think actually believed that he was going to have that role. But then what happened was Dwayne came in and he pretty much knocked it out of the park. And it had nothing to do with color or anything in regards to it. It's just the way that what he brought to the character, and it was the way he presented himself. And he also, the original character that was conceived was, I believe, a truck driver, and he was supposed to be very kind of simple-minded, where his impression, his interpretation of Ben, he kind of worked into the script. He did some revisions, I'll say, and also just developed the character a little bit more, where he was more intelligent and more, I don't want to use the word sophisticated, but at a higher level, we'll say.
No, but I wanted to say how significant this was. It was only the year before that Sidney Poitier did In the Heat of the Night. Yeah. And that's the first time you have a black man smacking a white man on film. And in this one, he not only gets to punch out the white guy, the annoying guy that you want to see get punched out. He also he winds up slapping the hysterical Barbara when she's hysterical. This is stuff that you couldn't get away with. This is very edgy stuff back then. I mean, this is the civil rights movement. People were still getting lynched back then.
And Jones, supposedly Jones was not happy about having to slap Barbara. That he felt that was going to be bad for him, for people to see him slapping that white woman. And he argued about it, but he went along with it. And I think both he and Romero kind of regretted it in the years to come.
But in the context of the movie, I think it really works. And the other thing is since this is not a big Hollywood production, because they would have never done it. You know what I mean? They wouldn't have taken that kind of risk. It's always in these as you say, independent movies, these guerrilla style movies. This is where the change takes place. It's kind of like with all of our fashion and that sort of thing. It's always kind of peripheral, and then it comes in and takes over our consciousness. It's like with music. It's like with dance. The tango starts out in bordellos, the ragtime's the whorehouses. There are always kind of these rap. Look how big rap is now. I mean, everything has rap influence, but it always starts somewhere in the periphery. It's not mainstream.
Right.
And it's the same thing with trends in film and in music. It starts to people see these interesting kind of developments, and it becomes part of our. Yeah, and I think it was really important. I don't think they thought that when they made the film, but it was important to get that out there. Of course, then they had the whole development of blaxploitation movies. That the big studios started putting up money to have these. And in fact, he wound up being in at least one of these things. I know Dwayne Jones, but eventually they got to play regular parts. They didn't have to be, in the hood.
But it's a shame though, because he felt it affected his career, and that's where it's almost, it's great for the part for the production, and it's significant, and I totally agree with you. But what tends to happen, and this is just an example with this movie, but where you could have other folks, and of course we could just go down the line for like the 60s. I mean, where people that have been in television productions, a lot of stuff that we like or love, or they are typecast, and then what happens is nobody can see past them in other productions, and then what even makes it worse is that if you are in that type of situation, and this was taking back place then, you're not getting any type of compensation for it. You know what I mean? So it's almost like, if it's bad enough that you can't get additional work, but then when you're not getting compensated for the work that has put you on the map, as it was, so to speak, back then, what happened with this film, because of the it went to public domain. And then if you look at in the 1960s with television shows, the residuals would only go up to like 6 episodes, and then that was it. It's cut off, and then they don't get paid for anything. It could show 1 million times, and it's like you recognize the individual or individuals, but they're not getting compensated for those appearances. Whereas now, today, totally different story.
Yeah. Well, I do think he was a rounded character in the movie. I thought it was. Yeah. In fact, everybody was, because you knew who the snake was, and you knew who the likable guys were, but none of them were perfect. It's
no, I think, and you're right, Ross. I think it totally worked within the context of the characters and the context of the film. It definitely worked.
I mean, you're under a lot of stress when zombies are coming to get you. And when somebody's hysterical, you got to slap them.
Well, and the guy, Harry Cooper, and he was actually a producer on the show. He did the production. He had the production company. He did the photography. He did the still photographs for the movie. I think he did over like 1,000 photographs. He did the makeup. He was really involved in the production of this, and he was one of the original financial backers, because it was originally, I think it was maybe 5 or 6 of them, and then that they put their money together to do this, and then they had to bring in other folks just because it was going to be a lot more expensive than what they initially thought. But what happens is his character at one point, when Ben is out, the lead is outside, and he's trying to get back into the house, and Cooper is terrified. He's frozen from the fear, and during the course of things that are going on in the house, when they're being terrorized, he's acting like this big tough guy. And then when push comes to shove, he doesn't open the door. And then what happens is Ben finally gets in, and he wants to wring Cooper's neck, and he punches him out a few times. And he says, I should have thrown you out there with those things.
Well, yeah, it's not just that Cooper's terrified, though. Cooper's he's consistently out for himself.
Right. Yeah.
And that's another tension there. Are you going to work together as a unit and try to get through this thing, or are you going to look out for number one? And there's that constant struggle between the two alpha dogs, in the movie, between Dwayne, Ben, Dwayne Jones, and between Cooper, your other guy, Carl Hardman. Which apparently, it's funny, because they work so well as adversaries in the film, but they actually became close during the filming and became friendly. And Hardman was deeply affected, apparently, when he learned of the death of Jones. Because they had become so close. And you see from that cast photo, everybody's happy. It's like, no, we're not getting eaten by zombies or fighting. We like each other. We've become close.
Yeah, and then as you're mentioning that, let me share a few more of the images from the movie.
Oh, did you not show the cast photo? I thought you did.
No,
I guess you showed it to me.
We saw it in post-production or pre-production.
You can re-edit this. That was the other thing, though. You said they had all the equipment and everything. It's true, they had all the equipment, but not all the equipment actually matched the other equipment. So that they had to edit on a different scale film. They had to edit the 35 millimeter on 16 millimeter, and they couldn't when they dubbed the sound, they couldn't tell what it sounded like. They just did it blind.
Right, and they went with Romero.
Yeah.
essentially just hoping that he got everything that needed to be and hoping that the sound was going to be okay with everything.
Yeah.
But
And everybody in the film was related in some way. Like you say, either they were involved, they're the crew, or they put up money. I mean, all the Coopers were a real family. It was just a family. They since the one guy was a producer, they wound up bringing him in, and the daughter that turns into a zombie with the trowel, she was the real daughter.
Yeah,
that
she was the daughter of Cooper.
Yeah, that must
And
have led
then,
to some interesting family.
Marilyn Eastman worked with him at the company, and I guess they were a couple, and they were together for almost like 40 years, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, and Judy was the receptionist.
Yeah,
so she got a part in the film too.
But here, I mean, here's a scene, and this is as far as what they did with the gore and everything, But,
yeah, that's probably you're showing these are the goriest sequences.
Yeah, by today's standards, it's nothing.
Lots of chocolate syrup used in these scenes, but because of the lighting and because of the black and white, it was largely suggestive.
That's what's right, and that's what sells it. And to your point, what you said earlier, you can make something, and you don't necessarily need to have I'm exaggerating, but the millions that goes into a lot of this stuff, because a lot of times what happens is it is makeup, or it's just now it tends to be the CGI. But with the horror films, they could really go overboard with a lot of this stuff. And here they actually make a lot of it suggestive. I mean, obviously towards the end, it's a little graphic because we see what's going on and everything. But and then there's the house.
There you go.
But now you referring to the cast photo. I mean, look, that's a happy crew. I mean, again, it's their family, their friends, they're coming together, they're making this picture. I mean, it's just a nice moment captured with everybody out,
Yeah, there's a picture that's circulating. If you keep the cast photo up for a second there, that's Johnny right in the middle. Now, right to Johnny's right, the guy with the striped shirt, I think is his brother. There's a picture of George Romero shooting the opening scene in the cemetery where he's holding the camera, and Johnny's brother is right there holding the equipment and stuff, and he looks all the world like Toad from American Graffiti, and it's just like they're just these young guys making a movie. It's just so exciting that they're out there doing it, and it's and then it turned out so well. When they finished the movie, they as soon as they finished dubbing and everything, they immediately threw it in the trunk of the car, apparently, and went to New York and just started shopping it, like trying to see if they could show it in any theater, just rent a theater for the night. And coincidentally, it was actually the night of the day that Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Yeah, it was I believe April 4th, right?
Yeah, so even if they didn't intend this kind of resonance with Dwayne Jones as the lead of the movie, I mean, current events kind of made the film more than it was in a lot of ways. The footage people were seeing on the news, I mean, for the first time, seeing all the carnage of the Vietnam War, and here, we're seeing very similar black and white documentary-esque footage of corpses, all over the lawn all the time, and as I said, the moon landing was the next year. So this whole space race was very much in people's minds. And now the spacecraft are going to bring viruses back from other worlds and turn us into zombies. And, it's I mean, you lived through these, you were more cognizant than we were, Bill. We were only kids at this time, like toddlers, just about. Do you remember like watching this thing and thinking, this is,
it was such a volatile time. And, I went to college in West Virginia. Believe it or not, I was in part of West Virginia that was not that far away from Pittsburgh. So I think I was aware of hearing about this new horror movie being made, which is, and little did I know then that it would become the classic that we're talking about tonight. But, oh yeah, living through that era of the 60s, volatile, and I'll never forget it. That certainly had an impact on my life for sure.
But isn't that crazy though, when you think we actually were able to send men to the moon, and yet all this stuff was still going on? I mean, you would think we would be more unified and more we would beyond, we were beyond a certain point in technology, but in regards to all the conflict that was still going on, and it was still so apparent. I mean, it's crazy when you
At
think
home,
about it.
you think you mean the social stuff you're talking about, at
Yes.
home, the rioting and the
Yeah.
assassinations and
Yeah.
all the unrest. I mean, and think about the how everything was just shaken up from the Ozzie and Harriet, from the nuclear 1950s suburban dream of the post-war family to, there were new not just racial stuff, but there were new gender roles. Barbara, who's hysterical in this movie, and some people dismiss her as dismiss that as her kind of being a weak woman or whatever. But I think it's a very realistic portrayal that,
I agree.
if you're in the cemetery and your brother is attacked and these zombies are coming, she's traumatized.
Right.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that for sure.
And she does have her moment of grace there at the end where she snaps to in a crisis and tries to help.
And originally, I guess they were planning on having her survive and her be more of a stronger type of character, but then they decided not to go that.
Well, she was so good with what she did. Yeah. Because that was her decision to play it like that. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
I didn't see the remake, but in the remake, apparently she's like a Sigourney Weaver type character.
Right. Stronger, right?
Stronger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and that brings up a point too, and this is something I'll just share real quickly, and something we always like to say on the show, that all roads lead to Star Trek. In this case, indirectly, because in the 1990 remake that George Romero actually was involved with, he did in Night of the Living Dead. Patricia Tallman, who was actually on Star Trek The Next Generation, she played the role of Barbara. She survives, and she is more of a stronger type of character than Barbara that's in this original film.
Right.
But in regards to what Judith O'Dea did, I think it really, really worked well. I think she played properly.
And talking about the enormous change and everything, the characters like Cooper, the guy who was always looking out for himself and he wants to be down in the basement and everything. I mean, the real life Coopers must have felt like society was just crumbling. I mean, it was becoming unrecognizable from what they knew before, the Coopers of the world. So
Right.
Archie Bunker, but not as funny.
Yeah.
Right.
Good analogy, Bill. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Alexandra's out there, Bill. She's saying, "Love you, Roy and Bill." Hi, Alexandra.
Alexandra.
Where's my love? So, and then the when you get toward the ending of the film, I mean, it's chilling with the black and white photography, which, by the way, was done by the actor who played Cooper. Carl Hardman actually took those photos, but I mean, it was so realistic. It's like newsprint. And in light of current events, I mean, totally believable. That would have happened. That it would not have been a case of mistaken identity. It was totally reminiscent of the photos that you would see of the lynchings and so forth.
And that ending was controversial, right? Because it seems to me, I read that when they were trying to get the film distributed, a couple of the studios wanted them to change that ending. They wanted to have more of a upbeat ending, and Romero refused to do it.
It's a powerful movie. Yeah.
Well, yeah, usually the heroes, or there's going to be a hero that's going to survive and make it through. And spoiler alert, folks, 55 years. But in this case, it wasn't to be, and he stuck. No pun intended. He stuck to his guns with that, and
such a bleak, such a nihilistic movie. But you know what? Cool Hand Luke, it's the same kind of thing. But this one was a little more. I mean, that one was kind of like a sucker punch. Like you stick it to the man, but the man always wins in the end. but in this one, it's kind of like we're all doomed.
In the whole, yeah. And go ahead, Bill.
No, I was just going to say, especially since Ben has worked so hard to survive this night, all that lumber he was pounding into the wall and putting the doors up and
Yeah,
all that.
yeah.
And, you know, all the conflicts he survived, to have it come to that kind of a bleak ending, kind of a bummer.
Yeah, because he defied all the odds and made it through everything. And just when he's thinking help is going to arrive, it's the actual help that takes him out. It's
Well,
a twisted.
and I don't think it's far fetched even today. I have a feeling that when the social order breaks down, that's the kind of crew you're going to have keeping law and order. So get ready for it.
Oh, gosh. I needed that.
On that note,
Continues to be relevant. It continues to be relevant.
As low budget as it was, the writing was
amazing. I absolutely agree. It was a great script. Apparently, there was a lot of improvisation that they worked into the script. But watching it, I thought, wow, this is like so much better written than a lot of things that we're seeing today. Yeah.
Well, I think that group had a lot of pride right from the beginning. I think the thought was, if we're going to do this, we're going to try to do it as well as we can do it. And I think that's why, all that original group, there were 10 or 12 of them, I think, initially. And they were not only, some of them were in the movie, but they were all doing other things besides. They were all doing multiple tasking, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was interesting too is they were trying to come together. I guess they were originally thinking that they could do this production for like $6,000, and then what happened was everybody was in the initial 10. I guess the initial 10 folks that were a part of this, they were contributing like $600 a person, and that's how they were approaching it. But then they soon found out that $6,000 wasn't going to cover it, and then they brought in another group of folks, but they essentially were keeping it where the original 10 actually had the I guess the more of the what am I trying to say, more of the actual
responsibility for getting the work done, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I just pictured Zero Mostel selling shares.
Yeah,
to
shares
love or whatever to the producers.
They had to hire shares.
The people that would give money would get to play zombies and eat organs and stuff. They'd have them out there in makeup. Yeah, you can be in the movie.
Oh, Jack Daly is saying, greetings, Bill, from Morgantown, West Virginia.
Hi, Jack.
Was that close to where you went to school?
I went to school near Wheeling, West Virginia. It's not too far away.
Okay. And Christian is saying, Ross, what we have here is failure to communicate. Strother Martin.
Right, and Cool Hand Luke. Yeah.
And of course, Chris LaRoche is saying everyone dies at the Alamo.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
What's also interesting is that the choice of location, and again, I don't know if this was intentional, but you can't get more quintessentially Americana than to put them in a farmhouse. You're out. This is America. This is the USA. And these are the forces that are churning out here to take down America.
One thing I thought was interesting too is they went out of their way to mention the towns that were in the film, because that way folks that would be actually seeing this movie, they would be able to relate to it.
Right. Yeah. And I think when they showed it on television, they had to keep flashing up that it was a dramatization so that people wouldn't freak out. They were afraid of like a War of the Worlds kind of reaction to it. It's like the zombies are here. Let's get out of here.
Evidently, the guy that played Harry Cooper, who was one of the producers who we were just talking about, Hardman, he did the voice, the radio, the voice on the radio.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The announcer was actually a personality, Billy. I think his name was
Chili Billy.
Chili Billy.
Yeah, he had a horror show in
Chiller. I think it was Chiller Theater in Pittsburgh. So I thought that was kind of cool.
And I mentioned this to you, right? In my dormitory in West Virginia, every once in a while, I would watch Chili Billy's Chiller Theater, because it reminded me of Zacharias Chiller Theater back at home where I grew up. So kind of small world in that way.
That's kind of cool.
I miss that era of the horror hosts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we still have Sven Gulli, but he's kind of national now. He's on the MeTV thing.
Elvira.
But Elvira, yeah, I don't know. Is she still doing it, or is she retired now? She's still known. She's still showing
There's
up
appearances, I think, but I don't think she's still doing the.
But yeah, I mean, we all had our local horror hosts. You know, we had Dr. Shock in Philly, and there were guys in New York, and yeah, but great times before everything got swallowed up by a few corporations. The other thing is about genre film. I talked about how that stuff kind of crept into the mainstream. Genre film, things like horror and science fiction and all the things that we love, were not that really well respected. I mean, there were not big studio productions, most of them. There were exceptions like Forbidden Planet, and 2001: A Space Odyssey and everything. But these things were generally drive-in fare. But because people grew up watching these things and loving them so much and being influenced by them, suddenly you get your George Lucases and your Steven Spielbergs and your Quentin Tarantinos and all these people, Guillermo del Toro, and all these guys like absorb everything they saw when they were, and now these are our tastemakers now. These are the guys who are they're making these the big polished multi-million-dollar films for the majors now. And horror has become mainstream. Science fiction is mainstream. I mean, Lord of the Rings is no longer for geeks.
Right. Or Star Trek. I mean, that's
Star Trek. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's true. It's cool. It's cool to be a nerd, or cool to be a geek. But we were enjoying it when, there wasn't no label with it.
But zombies aren't fringe anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like they can be still be used for subversive means, but they're now they're big movie stars now.
Hey, I want to welcome somebody that's out there. It says Savengoli in Chicago, and he's watching us on YouTube. Thank you for joining us. Please make sure I just want to say, please make sure to subscribe, and we appreciate your viewership. And there is no cost associated with subscribing. So thank you for being out there, and welcome to the show. And we hope that you're enjoying it. Yeah. Chris LaRoche is saying the six-fingered hand from Chiller Theater. I used to love that. I used to love that more than watching some of those movies that would be on. I would just look forward to that coming up and be like, oh, that's so cool.
You would just live for the breaks in the movies, because sometimes the movies weren't very good, but all the bits in between were hysterical.
Colin is saying Crypt Keeper, Tales from the Crypt. Yes, exactly. And and he's Savoli is saying it's cool to be a nerd. Yes. There you go. You got it. No, it's and those are prime examples, and it a lot of that has been lost. It's like a different type of it's a different time. Chris is saying zombies can run after you now. They are track stars now.
Yeah, I think that was the remake of Dawn of the Dead. Was the one where they sped them up and they could chase you down now.
Brennan is saying we had Bob Wilkins when I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area.
See, they're all fondly remembered too. We all know their names.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Yeah, Saturday Afternoon was not Saturday Afternoon in this area without Chiller Theater with Dr. Shock. He had the two of them. There's like Horror Theater and Chiller Theater or something.
Jeffrey was saying in Ohio we had Superhost and Houlihan and Big Chuck.
Okay.
And Matt is saying he just got flagged. I hope I'm back. Oh boy, Matt, what did you write?
Yeah.
Don't actually tell us what you wrote. Christian is saying I saw a censored version of Hammer's Twin of Evil last Friday on the new Creature Feature. Creature Feature, yeah.
What is Creature Feature? What's the new Creature Feature? Is there a channel or something, or is there what? Is there a show?
I don't know. I remember the old Creature Feature. Yeah. That was
Feature.
Because if they bring it back, it'd be great. But but you'd have to get rid of all everybody hogging your airspace. You have to get rid of the WB and Fox and all these things that are taken up. It used to have the 3 networks, and then the rest of the stations could be taken up with horror hosts.
Vince is commenting. He's saying, I loved USA Up All Night, hosted by Gilbert Godfrey and Ron Deschneer. Terrible movies with great hosts.
Horrible movies. Like, I didn't even, who realized there were so many bad, like, 80s sex comedies? I guess I suspected, but they showed them all on USA Up All Night.
Chris is saying you had horror movies late Saturday night and Tarzan movies Sunday morning.
Right.
Yeah.
For the Bowery Boys.
Matt is saying Twins of Evil, spectacular.
Yeah.
Loved Up All Night.
Yeah, that's back when I could stay up all night.
Yeah.
And the character relations in the movie were interesting too, because you got the two alpha dogs. You got Dwayne, Ben, and you got Cooper, Halderman or whatever his name is, and then you've got the two couples. You got the couples is kind of icy. The Coopers are kind of icy to each other and not very loving, and he's the one that wants to look out for himself, and you can see there's not a lot of warmth in that family. Then you got the other couple, Judy and who is it, Tom? That are the young lovers.
Romantic.
But you've got the zombies on the one hand, and you've got the vigilantes on the other, which are kind of like balanced. It's
that's a good point.
Yeah, there are all kinds of parallels and contrasts in the movie, but no matter where you fit into the spectrum, it's not enough to save you.
No, everybody meets their own fate in one way or the other.
Yeah.
Sean is commenting. He's saying a favorite of mine on that show was Sorority Babes in the Slime Ball Orama. Good one, Sean. Oh, that brings up a lot of talking about imagery earlier.
Yeah, that one hasn't become mainstream yet.
Chris is saying, hey guys, we grew up in the best times of television wise. Yeah, we sure did. Yeah. And Christian is saying they filmed the new creature feature in Bogota Bay, famous for Hitchcock's The Birds. Oh, okay, interesting.
I'm going to Google this to find out what this is about.
And Matt's saying those twins might keep you up all night.
Not the twins from The Shining.
The evil twins.
The evil twins. They're both Betty Davis. And I like the touch where Barbara's brother comes back. Johnny comes back at the end. And he puts his, if you don't catch it fast enough, he puts his hand on the door there, and you see he's got the driving glove on, so there's no mistaking. I mean, that's really good.
Fantastic.
It was a really nice touch as a filmmaker to say, all right, now put the glove on the door so people can see this Johnny.
Here's Johnny.
Yeah. The camera angles, the editing was great in this movie.
Well, speaking of editing, there was, I believe, an extra 6 to 8 minutes of exposition that was taking place between the Cooper couple, and I guess they wanted them to cut that out. I guess they felt that it was maybe too dry, and there wasn't enough. Yeah,
we need another zombie attack,
right? So,
in terms of the filmmaking itself, they were under a little bit of a disadvantage because they were shooting it in that farmhouse, most of it. I mean, they didn't have the advantage of shooting on a sound stage where they could spread things out and get all the shots they want. They had to make every shot work in that confined space in the farmhouse. And then I think the basement scenes weren't filmed in the farmhouse, but in the studio of was it Romero or the other guy?
Where they were doing the editing. Yeah.
They were doing the editing, right.
In Pittsburgh itself. Yeah. They did that in town. Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting.
That has to make it tough. Of course, it's one thing even you're filming, films are not made in sequence. So different sequences. I mean, one of the last scenes filmed was, at least in November of 1967, was when they did the graveyard scene,
right?
And that was with Johnny and his sister, and it was so cold they had to be careful when they were breathing to make sure that you wouldn't see their breaths coming out, because they're trying to keep it consistent across the board, and it's being filmed at different periods of the year. Oh,
and he that's the other great thing is that Romero took these curveballs that got thrown to him during the production, and he was able to make them work. Like the casting wasn't really a curveball, but Ben and Barbara didn't quite play the way he had intended from the start, and he was able to rework his, absorb it into his vision and make it work. Another thing was the guy who played Barbara's brother, Johnny, was one of the co-producers of the film. It was his car that they had at the beginning. Somebody wound up smacking it up at a point. So they actually worked that into the film, that they run into the tree. And he found all kinds of ways around all of these unexpected humps that can't, because they didn't have budget to go out and buy another car or something, have the car repaired. Didn't have the time to do it either.
Well, and the other thing you bring up about the car, the truck that blows up, they actually had two of those trucks. One of them I don't believe worked, and then the other one did, but they were identical to each other, and they were amazed that they were able to actually find two trucks out in the the boonies of Pennsylvania that were so identical at that time, and it worked out well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Christian is writing, Chris is right. They got away with so much rating wise. I see my first grown woman naked in that film. Interesting enough, that scene usually slid past the censors on television.
Yeah, they would leave that in. It is interesting. I mean, it's not any kind of a sensual portrayal. It's just there. I mean, all the zombies are in different states of dress and different. It was very realistic, because it was basically if you died, you came back as a zombie. So naturally, you'd be dressed in whatever you were wearing at the time. But so somebody wanders on nude at a point. Thank God it wasn't some of those guys, though. Oh my God. Yeah. No, I think you're wearing a robe.
Oh boy.
I think it was interesting also that I think one of the newscasts said that it was the recent dead that were being affected by, apparently this had something to do with something happening in outer space. There was some kind of explosion of what was it?
It was radiation that was
Radiation. Right.
So it wasn't impacting, at this point, it wasn't impacting people who were already buried, but it was people in funeral parlors or laying on tables in the hospital. That sort of person that was impacted by this.
They didn't even have to explain, but it was a good use of media, because then they got to use the TV and they got to use the radio, and they were listening to all this stuff and trying to figure out what was happening. And in fact, I don't even remember. It's been a long time since I've seen the second one. I don't know if they bothered to kind of retcon it. Like maybe this was just a theory of what happened, and they say something else in a later film, or if it's or if they just kind of just don't mention it again. They just have them be the zombies are out there now. We don't have to talk about how they turned up, but it was an interesting theory about how the radiation from space.
And the best part of it was the way they played it. They played it straight. I mean, it almost comes across comical the way that they're portraying it, because of what they're saying about these things coming alive and everything. But they played it totally straight. And
they played straight, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, there were some comic scenes. I mean, what about in DC? They have that one scene in DC where you've got the general, and you've got the politicians, and the press is there asking them questions, and they've all and they're contradicting each other and obviously getting short with each other because they're leaking information they shouldn't really. No, well, this is what I think, and it was like a scene clipped out of Strangelove or something that they kind of dropped into the middle of Night of the Living Dead. Yeah.
Chris is saying back then radiation caused everything. It's true. I mean,
it's still right. Leftover from Tarantula, from all the drive-in movies,
or them.
Yeah, right. All the giant insect movies.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing was it fit in with the whole theme about how everything was just literally going to hell, I guess, but about how everything was changing and it was no longer the world anybody recognized anymore. There's this theme about spirituality running through it. Because Johnny at the beginning, remember they're at the cemetery, and Johnny, says, what are you doing? We're not in church or whatever. I never feel the need to pray outside of church or what have you. And this kind of goes throughout the film. There are these religious or subversions of religion.
Almost like a dark mood, because
Well,
Romero even brings it up: little hope, absolute despair, ultimate tragedy.
and
It's just very dark and bleak, and it goes,
well,
as you said, throughout the whole film, and then right
and,
to
well,
the
and they say on the news, no funerals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no ceremony anymore, and people die. The loss of humanity is what it is.
Right.
You know, and we're becoming zombified. Even if we're not zombies, we're zombified because human life no longer has any value. And in fact, when you finally die, you know, it's like there's all this. A lot of the religions believe in the resurrection and everything, but no, you come back as a zombie.
But you know what's scary though, and it actually kind of carries over into today, because when we were going through COVID, in the
Well,
heart of
absolutely,
COVID,
absolutely.
there were funerals. I mean, people were passing away, and you couldn't have these. You couldn't
Right.
have the funerals. You couldn't have the memorials.
Right.
Kind of, it's scary, but it's almost like art and becoming life. And it took like 50 years to get here with that, but it actually kind of happened. And
No,
how
I thought of
scary
that.
is that with that connection?
Thought of that too with the parallels.
Yeah.
And I also thought of Life Force because we had just done that recently.
Wait a minute, Life Force, Ross. Are you talking about the movie with Patrick Stewart?
Yeah, that's the movie, Roy.
Oh, and Matilda May.
Saw my first nude woman in Night of the Living Dead. But anyway, with the exponential spread of vampirism and I guess they were kind of like zombies in that movie in London.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, like COVID, was another.
Oh yeah.
Another parallel here, and that Romero never would have known about.
No.
So
that's so true.
Pretty visionary on a lot of levels. Yeah, but it's like when writers write books, they write books, or any artist creates a work of art. It's not always there, but they're pretty sensitive to stimuli around them and kind of distill it into their. And if the really great stuff is the stuff that can really, it stands up generation after generation after generation. This stuff is relevant, and this was like lightning in a bottle.
Martin is saying at least they weren't boiling green.
Yeah, that's pretty dehumanizing too. Yeah, but again, after this, everything was pretty bleak. No more happy sci-fi except Star Wars.
Christian is saying, I like the connection of Night in Return of the Living Dead, which also became a cult film and probably the best film in that genre.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
No, I haven't either. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, as a rule, I don't chase down the zombie movies.
Nah, I let them come to me. Like Twilight Zone stands up. Yeah, Twilight Zone definitely stands up. It's to this day. I think that Twilight Zone is ageless. I think you could watch that probably 20 years from now, and it's still. I mean, obviously the technology might be a little bit, behind, but in regards to the writing, the stories, I mean, Serling was just amazing. I mean,
it's probably not. I'm just going to throw this out there as an aside because this is not what the show is about. But I just saw something on the internet today, and tomorrow night in Binghamton, Rod Serling's hometown, they're actually having a Bernard Herrmann concert where they're doing the show that we covered here, Walking Distance. They're doing the music from Walking Distance tomorrow night, and then they're doing it with actors.
Wow, really?
Twice with the Binghamton Symphony. So if you want to Google that and you're in the Binghamton area, I mean, it's about a 3-hour drive for me, and it's like I get real tempted. It's like 3 hours isn't so bad.
They're going to be doing Walking Distance. They're going to be recreating it. The whole.
Yeah, what they're going to do, I think they're going to at least read the script with the music.
Let me tell you something. That is probably one of my top 10 favorite Twilight Zone episodes.
Should we go?
That is nostalgia.
Should we do the road trip?
It is worth a road trip, honestly.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's 7 or 8 o'clock when it starts, but
Oh, wow.
It would probably take us about 3 hours to get up there.
And it's funny. The last time I was in Binghamton was with Vince out there. We saw William Shatner back in September of 2003. He was up there. And it was funny too, because and I'm not going to say who the guy was, but the guy that was on stage was citing some facts, and I was like twitching in the audience. I'm like, he's not right. And he was part of the whole convention circuit. I mean, he worked with Paramount and everything. And then Vince was like, I dare you. I dare you. Tell him he's wrong, Roy. I dare you. I did.
Oh, and one further attraction, the Calliope that they used in the show, I think is going to be there in the concert.
Really? The original from the...
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, Ross, you're killing me.
I know. I'll have to look it up. I might be telling tales out of school, but I think it's supposed to be there. So.
And I'm actually I'm working my my side job tomorrow too.
Yeah, you're gonna have to call in sick. Road trip.
Vince is saying William Shatner. Yeah. Anyway, so what do you know as we start to wind down? What do you think, guys? I'm going to start with Bill. Definitely thumbs up, Bill.
Oh, definitely a thumbs up for this movie. I think it's great. And just another thought that I had about it is we've been talking about the documentarian style of it, but one of the things that hits me is in the beginning, it's kind of desolate. It's kind of desolate. You know, you've got the two people in the cemetery, and then they end up in the one ends up in the farmhouse. Another guy joins her in the farmhouse, and then suddenly we have a couple more people coming up from the basement. So it's a relatively small group of people, and it's like something that John Q. Public can identify with. It something like this maybe could happen to me. Right. And then the documentarian aspect of it, as they start listening to the radio, watching it on television, we see that it is more of a global impact on it, or at least the Eastern United States. And I thought that was an effective contrast of it having a personal impact, but also how it impacts on the greater area.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point.
I definitely think the movie is terrific.
Yeah. Again, good writing, you know, that they did that with the news and everything. Yeah, because this is something that, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ross. I'll come back to it.
I was just going to say that this movie is something that could have gone horribly wrong. I mean, it could have just been like a lousy drive-in movie. It could have turned into Plan 9 from Outer Space, you know, in the wrong hands.
For sure.
Yeah,
one of the things that I noticed, because I have been watching Plan 9 so much lately, is that, I mean, there's a deliberate hand to Night of the Living Dead. You know, there was a vision there to each of those scenes, and they stayed with it until they got it right. Whereas in Plan 9, not so much. You know, you see a scene and you say, oh, they could have fixed that. They could have done a little better with that, and they didn't. So the deliberateness of the approach, that kind of a stern hand at the helm, that makes the big difference, along with the writing.
Yeah, and it's a shame too, because in regards to Ed Wood, his intent was really good. I mean, he really wanted it to be that picture. He wanted to have this. He had a vision, but he just couldn't follow through where it needed to be, and it's a shame, because then he kind of, you know, the film, as we all know, has gotten the Golden Turkey Award. And I remember that like 40 years ago being at Walden Books again, and there was a book talking about this movie, and little did I know that, you know, we'd be doing this, you know, Plan 9 experience 40 years later. But it's exactly, and yeah, you have to feel sorry for the guy, because he really was, his intent was good, and the effort was he was really trying to follow through with it, but he just couldn't hit the mark.
And a lot of comparisons and contrasts to the two films. They were both low budget. They were both using inexperienced actors. So either one of them could have gone either way, to get back to Ross's point.
Yeah.
One went one way, the other one went another way. But fortunately for the Country Gate Playhouse, that other way is going to be fantastic.
That's absolutely.
It seems like a good segue, perhaps.
Yeah, you just took the words out of my mouth. And with that, we're going to go right into the shout out portion of the show. And Bill, I'm going to share the screen. And if you can tell us, well, about some of the stuff that's coming up, and, you know, where Country Gate is. Tell us about Country Gate.
Yeah.
We always talk about Country Gate on the show, but now we have you here to...
First of all, thank you, Roy and Ross, for, you know, giving Country Gate a shout out. every week for all these years, and we appreciate it. And I think it's really been helpful. We were knocked on our keisters by the pandemic, our little community theater group, and it's hard to rally back after being shut down for 3 years. And it's an old building, as you maybe can tell from that picture. 1939 it was built. It takes a lot of maintenance and a lot of utility costs. And when you aren't able to sell tickets for 3 years, it becomes a problem, and you're still paying the insurance premiums and all that. So it's been difficult. We've had a lot of generous patrons who have helped us to keep us on our feet. We're scratching our way back. We've been doing. We did a summer classic film festival, and as I said earlier, we have been doing a October classic horror film, and they've all been public domain films, because obviously the other advantage to us in that is that we don't have to pay a royalty or a licensing fee in order to show them. So they've been great, and we've gotten to meet a lot of people who have come to our theater who are not necessarily have been there for our stage productions, but they like classic films, and so we've made some new friends doing that. We will be continuing that tomorrow night, 8:00, with The Little Shop of Horrors. Now, this is not the musical, which our theater has done 3 times, and I was recently Mr. Mushnick, the owner of the flower shop, when we did it last a few years ago. But this is the non-musical. It's kind of a horror film, but it's also kind of a comedy film, and it's a lot of fun. And the claim to fame of it is that it features, not in a big part, but in an early featured part, Mr. Jack Nicholson. And this was 9 years before he was to become a star. He was a regular of Mr. Corman, who directed this film, and he kind of got a lot of early experience with this type of movie. This movie was made in a week, they tell me. 1 week it took him to film The Little Shop of Horrors. So that's tomorrow night. But our big spectacular, which I've been hinting at all night, is the Plan 9 Experience. This is next weekend, October 29th at 8 and October 30th at 2. My pals and I, and that includes Mr. Roy there, we will be screening Plan 9 from outer space. We'll be up on stage with the screen. We'll be interacting. We'll be wisecracking. We'll be doing some funny bits with it, pointing out some of the high points, 1 or 2, and some of the low points, many more. And we also have some song parodies in it, and that's where we'll have a little more fun with all of our fine actors who have been working so hard on this. That's I think it's going to be hysterical fun. You'll look at the worst movie ever made in a totally different light. At least I hope so. If nothing else, you'll come and have a good time with us, and you'll be helping our theater to rebound. And we will be doing a live Christmas review the second 2 weekends in December. That begins on December 10th. So again, thank you, Roy and Ross, for the fine promotion you have given us, and we hope to see some of your audience at the theater sometime. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Bill. Much appreciated. And some nice comments. Sue just wanted to comment too. She said, Roy, please tell Bill Scurato we support you and wish the very best for you and the Country Gate Theater.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And the Country Gate Theater, just to remind everybody, is in Belvedere, New Jersey. So if you are, as Bill said, if you're in the area and you're local to the area, it's right there where it borders Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So, and again, we hope you can make it. For information too, Bill, the website, there's 2 sites that they can go to. They can go to www.countrygate.org. And then you have a personal site, which is www.billscurato.com too.
Yeah, thank you, Roy. I forgot to say that. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. We also want to give a shout out to our friends Mike and Mary Beth for Sci-Fi Distilled. They are on Wednesday nights, and they're going to be back this Wednesday, October 26th at 7 p.m. And they're going to be doing the 1999 film The Mummy, and that's with is it Brendan Fraser, I believe, and that was the first film that in that series of films, I believe.
Yep.
So they're going to be discussing that, and that will be on Wednesday. And then also Captain Phil's Planet, which Captain Phil is on WSB 90.1 FM Stony Brook. Captain Phil was out there earlier tonight. He's going to catch us up on the replay. Captain Phil broadcasts live on alternating Thursdays from 3 to 5 p.m. And then he is also on Friday nights from 9 to 11:30 p.m. And you can also listen to his recordings there as well and catch Captain Phil. And also I want to give a shout out to Studio One Thrift. This is to the owners, Snow and Martha. They've actually just started putting this business together. It's an online business that they have, and they showcase their lineup for all seasons and all year long. It's quality, stylish, affordable clothing for men and women. So you can actually go to the website, check out their the clothing line that they do offer, and you can order online, and it's very affordable. For details, you can go to www.studioonethrift.com. And again, it's Martha and Snow that run this. Definitely check them out. And they have a lot of quality merchandise that you can find there on their website. And Ross, if you can let everybody know what you've got going on for the weekend.
All right. Well, these are the two shows I've got on WWFM, the Classical Network. Picture Perfect's the movie music show that airs tomorrow night at 6. And tomorrow night, the theme is behind the scenes horror. Not all the screams are on screen in these 4 films, as we take a look at the film Hitchcock, which is the one that had Anthony Hopkins playing Alfred Hitchcock, and Helen Mirren was in it as Mrs. Hitch. It's about the making of Psycho, and the music is by Danny Elfman. I'll have some music from Matinee, which has John Goodman as a William Castle-esque filmmaker who, has films with a lot of gimmicks, like William Castle had skeletons that flew over the audience, and he issued life insurance policies for people who would have heart attacks during his films and that sort of thing. It's a take on that kind of thing, but it's set against the backdrop of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Joe Dante was the director, and the music was by Jerry Goldsmith. So we'll hear music from Matinee. We'll also hear from Gods and Monsters, which was a film that had Ian McKellen in it. He played James Whale, who was the director of the Boris Karloff Frankenstein and The Invisible Man. And it's about his final years. Brendan Fraser's in it also, who's in The Mummy. He's co-stars with Ian McKellen. And the music is by Carter Burwell. And finally, coincidentally, I'll have some music from Ed Wood, the Tim Burton love letter to the director of Plan 9 from Outer Space. And the music is a great score by Howard Shore. Lots of bongos and theremins and that sort of thing. So that's behind the scenes horror tomorrow night on Picture Perfect. That's at 6 o'clock on WWFM.org. Sunday night on The Lost Chord, that's unusual and neglected classical music. This week I'm focusing on all concert pieces that were inspired by Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. So I have an overture called Boy Wizard by Herbert Chappell. By coincidence, Herbert Chappell wrote a song called The Gonk, actually a little 3-minute ridiculous piece of light music that gets used in Dawn of the Dead, George A. Romero's movie. So if you Google The Gonk by Herbert Chappell, you'll know what that is. But he wrote an overture inspired by Harry Potter called Boy Wizard. I'll also be playing a suite from the American composer Craig Russell. He wrote a suite called Middle Earth. And finally, there's a symphony on there by the Finnish composer Ali Salonen called The Dreams of Gandalf. It's Salonen's Symphony No. 7. So all that's Sunday night on The Lost Chord. The program's Spellbound. And again, you can hear these at WWFM.org at the times indicated. And I will tease them on my Facebook page. I'll promote Picture Perfect tomorrow and The Lost Chord Sunday on Classic Ross Amico. And if you can't catch them at those times, they're posted later as webcasts. I don't know if I said that on WWFM.org. Thank you, Roy.
Thanks, Ross. Cool.
You're welcome.
And just to let everybody know, Ross and I will be back. We will be back next Friday October 28th, as we wind down Halloween month. We are coming into the last weekend of our celebration of Halloween, which is crazy. This month has gone so incredibly fast, but it's been a really exciting month, and a lot of ghoul, we'll say. And we are going to be wrapping things up, and we're going to be doing a special crossover episode. We've been doing this as kind of an annual event with Mike and Mary Beth. It's become a tradition as we do the crossover for Halloween, and they will be joining us from Sci-Fi Distilled, and we will be discussing the 1964-1966 classic television series, The Munsters. So we're going to go a little lighter, folks, and with everything that we've been discussing. So we will be covering The Munsters. And again, this is the TV series from the 60s. As many of you know, Rob Zombie just released on Netflix, actually, The Munsters, the latest movie, and it just came out just several weeks ago. So this is going to be going back to the origins of it. And it's crazy to think that this series is literally coming up on 60 years old. I can't even believe it. But anyway, we will be covering that. So we hope to see you there for that. And one last thing, I just want to remind everybody, and I want to say thank you to the folks out there. We recently transitioned to StreamYard. It was something that I had been kind of holding off on for a while. In fact, Warren Friedrich, friend, who actually was telling me about check it out. And I was kind of holding out because used to being using Zoom, and it's when you got something going and it seems to be kind of flowing, and there was thanks to Zoom, and not knocking it, because honestly, if it wasn't for Zoom, the show would not have gone. However, as things progressed and everything, there's different formats and different things and you'd like to do and different capabilities. Anyway, he was telling me definitely check it out. So I actually took his advice when we did the Virtual Space 1999 convention. It was utilizing StreamYard, and it has been working fantastic. And it worked fantastic for that convention. So made the decision to bring it over and utilize it. And we've been using that. And one of the features has been to actually be able to broadcast not only on Facebook, but on YouTube as well as Twitter at the same time. So it's actually opened us up quite a bit, and I'm very, very excited about that. And I am appreciative for the folks out there that have taken the time to not only watch us on Facebook, because your likes and your shares and your follows are very, very much appreciated, but also doing the same thing as so on YouTube as well as Twitter. And again, there is no cost associated with it. So please, if you haven't already, just go to YouTube as well as Twitter. And if you have accounts, and just please either follow us or subscribe. And it's very helpful. And if you like, you can actually share and just let everybody know, we're out there. And then the other thing is, if you want to even go a step further, you can do reviews on Facebook as well. So it would be much appreciated if you take the time to do that. And we're very thankful for that. So anyway, just wanted to give that last word in regards to that. But as I come back, Bill, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. And again, you were on from the very beginning of this whole development of this show. I mean, when it started, and it's awesome to have you back on as not only as a host, but as a friend, and to just share with everything in regards to this, and then letting us know about everything going on at the theater, and also just giving your insights in regards to filmmaking and also the theater as well too.
Well, thank you, Roy. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. I enjoy you guys every week. I'm always out there, and you do a great job. Thanks very much.
No, we really appreciate your support. Thanks.
Thank you.
So, folks, stay safe. Have a wonderful weekend. Bill and Ross, last words.
I was just going to say, it's just remarkable that this film was so reviled by the critics at the time it came out, and shocked so many people, and was just, totally dismissed in its way, only to have the legs it's had and to be revived by organizations like the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and to be put out by the Criterion Collection, and now be elevated to, this masterpiece of American cinema. it's really quite a journey for Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, and I agree, and I continue to be fascinated by the fact that this was a group of young fellas and women who decided, hey, I don't really like the way things are going generally. Let's try to do something on our own. Let's do a grassroots movement to do something that we have a lot of passion for and that we really love. And they did it. I mean, a lot of people think that, but not that many people actually follow through and do it. But these folks did. So I appreciate that, and I respect that. And I think the movie is great, really great.
Great last thoughts. Everyone, live long and prosper. Sherry, I'm just going to put Sherry's comment up as the last comment. She said, thanks for being on the show, Bill. Great job. This talk of death is chilling. Lots of laughs.
'Tis the season.
Have a wonderful week, everyone, and thank you. Take care.
Have a good
and live long and prosper.
Good night.
Good night.